What's up, guys? This is Greg. I'm here. Just wanted to go over my ideas for Rafa's skill tree. I tried to throw together one somewhat interesting build for each tree. We're going to start off with the one I'm most excited about. It's going to be the Peacemaker Cannons tree, and we're going to be focused on the capstone of Beam Team. So Beam Team replaces the cannons with a shock and corrosive beam, and each beam locks onto enemies. The gameplay for this looks really good, and the range on it looks very strong. Especially compared to the gameplay I saw for a double auto shot, which just completely took the wind out of my sails for that one. But maybe it's good in close range. Maybe I just need to try it myself. We'll see. But let's just focus on Beam Team for now. So Beam Team also deals 20% increased action skill damage when we apply a status effect. I don't know if that is going to be per status effect or if that's just like the enemy has a status effect on it. We're dealing more damage now. But this is something that we're probably going to be able to keep up all the time, especially if we take this point for Electron. So Electron says enemies damaged by Rafa's Peacemaker cannons have increased status effect chance. So that's 35% just on one node. That's pretty strong. And really the whole tree is going to be based on boosting up our opportunities for having status effects. So one of the fun interactions is this node pain reaction. So pain reaction makes it so that we're more likely to ricochet for every status effect that we have on an enemy. And then on top of that, there's nodes like Inspirado here. And Inspirado makes it so that every time we inflict the status effect on an enemy, we gain increased action skill cooldown and improved action skill duration. So not only do we get increased cooldown, but the skill lasts longer. So between those two status effects, that's plenty there to get this going. But what if we went a little further with that? Let's say we take this node, Errant Spark, which makes it so that all of our indirect projectiles, which includes our beams, deal bonus fire damage. So now we have fire damage in the mix. And then we take Confetti, which makes it so that our ordnance deals bonus damage based on our current weapon's element. And then we also take Insta4 Battle System, which makes it so that our cannons can scale with ordnance damage, but also count as ordnance damage. So if we were to hold like a corrosive or radiation or a cryo weapon, that would give us now 4 status effects to ramp up the stacks on Inspirado very quickly. But not only that, we also will be gaining bonus shock damage with our gun from concentrated buildup. With more shock damage, we'll have a more consistent way of applying status effects even without the cannons. And then between all of those nodes, we're going to be able to have, in theory, 4 status effects going, which will help us get these ricochets going even with little point investment. And the reason I don't have this at 5 points is because I wanted to spread some points into utility. So we have Resiliency here for increased damage reduction while Overdrive is active. So that's going to be during the entirety of Peacemaker cannons and then an additional 12 seconds after, I think is how Overdrive works. Yep. So an additional 12 seconds after our action skill ends. So that's going to be quite a lot of uptime on this damage reduction. Just going back through this chronologically, I think it's a good idea to start with increased fire rate just to get those cannons going a lot faster and also getting us shooting faster. I also decided to add in some shield scaling here. So with the See a Kill skill, we'll be able to restore shield based on our max health every time we kill an enemy. And with our beams up and us shooting guns, we're going to be killing quite a few enemies. So this is going to be a really good way to get shield gen going basically all the time. Outside of boss encounters, I suppose, that don't have trash mobs. And then El Valiente here is a good follow-up node because we deal increased damage from all sources the more shield that we have. So if we can keep our shields stacked up, especially with this damage reduction over here, on top of the shield regen, we'll have 10% per point. So I'll be up to an increase of 30% from 3 points. So, a 10% damage per point increase if we can swing it between these two nodes is going to be pretty powerful. And then obviously we just have some additional skill damage here on Maestro, and then additional damage with all of our indirect projectiles. There's really not much else to talk about with this one. I'm really excited about this. I think there's a lot of potential here. This is probably what I'll be playing second. If you really want to scale duration even harder, you could find some points to drop on here and then go with Instinto and Huerga. And this combination will make it so that we're critting more often and also getting action skill duration from both the Augment and from Huerga. So there's some potential there, but I don't think that that is going to outpace the ordnance damage scaling that we'll be able to get from this. This adds an entire new bucket of damage for the Peacemaker cannons. Just the potential there is way too high. And then one last thought on this tree is that you could also take Vitriol to make it so that you have like a fifth element here. So you would have bonus corrosive damage on, you could do like a cryo sniper in your main hand. And then that would put you up to 5 status effects. 5 status effects, you could get some real ricochet potential here and maybe put more points into this if you find that some of this other utility isn't really worth it in comparison to the ricochets. But that's to be seen. So moving on to the next tree, the green tree. This is the melee arc knives tree. So originally this is a tree that focuses on dealing shock damage with our action skill of, running around with 2 big old knives, but we're going to change that up and make it more of a corrosive ranged play style that focuses on scaling duration to also scale our damage. So we're going to do that mostly through Midnight Oil and El Borracho. So both of these nodes are for bonus corrosive damage the longer that we've had our active skill up, and El Borracho is for increased damage while our action skill has been up. I do believe that caps have been added onto these now that people are playing the game compared to what we see in maxroll. So don't get too excited about infinitely scaling damage. I don't think that's something that they would leave this obviously in the game. But you might be asking, okay, how are we going to maximize the damage? Well, in theory, we'd be maximizing it by taking this augment Dead Man Walking. So Dead Man Walking makes it so that our action skill doesn't run out and actually end when our duration is up. But when the duration is up, we just lose health instead. And to counteract that, we're going to have to scale some critical hit chance so that we can use Saldar. So Saldar makes it so that our melee crits gain lifesteal. And if given the gameplay that I've seen, we're going to be able to move around pretty quickly, especially with Expedite giving us 25% increased movement speed during our action skill on top of the 25. So this doubles our movement speed increase here. That's crazy. That's just so much speed just from this node. It's kind of ridiculous. We're going to be running around, keeping our action skill up, also regenning life on top of our life steal, and just absolutely melting face with these storm gliders. If you want to focus more on staying alive and maybe staying really tanky, you could take Altered Cabron. Altered Cabron makes it so that we gain health, we deal bonus corrosive damage, and this stacks up a lot. So there's some potential for taking this as well if you don't want to deal with the life draining here, if that's too aggressive. But if you want to have the most fun, I would probably say that we go with Acid Drop. From what I've seen, that clicking mouse 2 on this one is just nothing but fun. Just the absolute dive bomb, slam into the ground. It looks a lot like Leap Slam from PoE. Yeah, probably going to have to play around with that and just have some fun with that at some point. But outside of some utility, I almost forgot this node. This node makes it so that we gain skill damage the longer that we've had our action skill up. So we have 3 nodes on the tree in damn near a straight line that scale up with duration on this skill. It's just a no-brainer. But so then moving on to the last few points that I put into Blowout. So if we're scaling our crit damage with our melee skills and we're already going into a bunch of corrosive damage, it would be pretty beneficial in my mind to take this node, because when we crit, we have these lob projectiles that'll come out, and the longer our action skill has been up, the more projectiles that spawn. So we can be spawning up to 6 projectiles and these will be triggering every second and just lobbing out and dealing extra corrosive damage on top of everything else that we're doing. And then just for funsies, I put in 1 point here for increased splash damage. So that's really it for this build. Scale duration as much as we can with health regen for dead man walking, deal a ton of corrosive damage, and just melt face. So last but actually least, in my opinion, we're going to move on to the blue tree, which focus on Apophis Lance. So the Apophis Lance is like an extra arm cannon that we hold with our left hand, and while we have that out, our main hand gun handling goes down, but we can charge up this Apophis Lance while we're still shooting and deal a bunch of extra shock damage in really quick bursts, given how low this base cooldown is compared to our other skills. There's a lot of ideas that you could have with this one. If I were to play this, I might not take a capstone, but for this build, I'm gonna focus in on the corrosive projectiles because I was thinking about my Arc Knives build and thinking about how fun that would be, and this build basically lets you do that in your offhand while you can just blast away. Let's check it out. This is focused on Project Basilisk. Project Basilisk changes the lance so that it fires corrosive blobs that split out into a bunch of smaller projectiles that on detonation, and we'll have more splits with the more charges we have. So a good idea for this is to take the augment here to gain an additional charge, and once we consume all 4 or more, the or more is very interesting, charges that we have, we get 100% increased action skill potency, which is pretty strong. That's a huge increase. So this tree is mostly going to focus on that. We have a lot of comfort here in reload speed and reducing our cooldowns with Preparado every time we reload, and that stacks quite a lot. So if you're using like a pistol or something with a relatively small mag and real fast reloads, you're going to be able to get these stacks up pretty fast, and we're going to have a lot of uptime on Apophis Lance. And then here's just some fire rate to kind of help with getting us to reload more often. That'll be very interesting in combination with metal management, which will make it so that we're not consuming ammo for 2 seconds every time we trigger our action skill. You could also make some room to get regenerating points here, regenerating ammo points here. Those might help given how much we're going to try to be reloading with this setup. And then we also take Pa Dentro for just some health regen comfort. And then besides that, this really is not a very exciting tree, in my opinion. But there is going to be probably something funny here about detonation. So outside of the ridiculous Borderlands pun of a name, this makes it so that every time we damage an enemy with an action skill, we place a remote detonator on them, and those remote detonators will explode, I guess. So this will at least add some fun of having a bunch of splitting corrosive projectiles. It's probably going to feel I hate to bring up PoE twice in this one video, but it's probably going to feel like any sort of chain or fork projectile build over there, at least the closest that we can get with an action skill outside of ricochets. And because I wanted to stay in this tree, I might as well grab these storm gliders. So this tree really does just kind of take from my concept for the Arc Knives tree and try to apply that same thing here. I really like some of the potential here in this side of the tree in terms of being able to just get a bunch of status applied here and getting shock going on an enemy. And then if I were to focus on this side of the tree, I would not take Project Raiju. I saw some gameplay of this, and the range on it just looked abysmal. Did not look very fun to me, but I could be wrong. So I think that's about it for these 3 builds. I don't think I'm gonna cook anything for Amon or Vex. I'll leave those to other people. Probably just gonna chill out on this, actually play something instead of staring at maxroll for another day. And then yeah, let me know what you guys want to see me test. If there's anything in particular you're interested in seeing, either from Rafa or Harlow, I'll be happy to try to get that tested out in the first day or 2 of the game. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and talk to you later.